Name drop everyone who said no to you.
I will simply go back to you will pay higher.
Episode, I don't even remember. Like 69, 70 of Exit Liquidity?
Hopefully it's 69.
Yeah, I think we used 69 for the last one, but I think
We
this
do it
is
again. I think 69.2.
69.2 of Exit Liquidity. We got Rushi for movement.
Yo, what's up, guys?
So we start first of all, it's fucking flooding in Dubai right now. It basically swam here to get here, so I really appreciate you coming out here.
Yeah, my Uber was like an hour-long drive for context, and it was like a boat. And like all around, it was like literally flooded, and the dude was like going get a snail. But like he got me here, so I'm pretty bullish. But yeah, it was like driving a boat.
Yeah, and everything in Dubai for some reason is like 40 or 20 minutes away from each other, so I really appreciate you coming out for this.
I appreciate having me.
This is super awesome. Ali is sick. Dude caught something on the plane, so he is not here for today's episode, but we move.
You move.
We move. So we'll start with everyone's favorite question. You're 21 years old, fucking nuts. 21 years old, assuming you've been in the space for at least a little bit. Can you give us your favorite moment that you were Exit Liquidity?
When I was Exit Liquidity, actually recently, my roommate got me into like Solana meme coins for like a few days. And they were making a lot of money, and I was feeling FOMO because I don't really trade. As like a founder, you probably shouldn't, but like I put some money, like a few grand, into like WIF, into like all other like meme coins, like Herald, which is some dog coin. And I didn't know you're supposed to like actually watch the markets. I just figured it was going to hold for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I checked my wallet like a week ago, and it's like everything's zero. Like I literally lost like 90% of all my capital because I got dumped on, and apparently 2 of them were rug pulls as well. So after that, I vowed never trade meme coins because I just can't do it.
Yeah, it's tough. I think like I've eviscerated like my entire Solana bag just aping random shit on Photon. So yeah, the Solana stuff is difficult.
Yeah.
So obviously you're the founder?
Yeah.
Founder of Movement Labs. Can you give us the kind of early days of Movement Labs? How you came up with the idea, why the fuck you decided to start this?
Yeah, so I can give you my quick background. I started my engineering career when I was like 14. I was one of the youngest hires at United Health Group. Led an on-prem database cloud migration team. So was deeply involved in like distributed systems, cryptography, and whatnot. Got into like the Cosmos Ethereum ecosystem like 3 years ago ish. Just engineering with Rust and Cosmos and whatnot. Around a year and a half ago, this is like August 2022, and now like 2 years basically. I read this article that like Facebook was building a programming language. At the time, I was building like Rust-based language, so it was pretty similar. And to me, like I was in college. I was like a freshman at Vanderbilt, which is, for those that aren't familiar, it's like the south of Nashville, south of the States. And wanted to really like explore it because for me, it was really exciting that Facebook, the biggest consumer app in the world, the app that everyone's trying to get on chain, saw the current chain of blockchain infrastructure and was like, this isn't good enough. This $4.5 billion lost. Like most of retail is Exit Liquidity ultimately in terms of security. And then like throughput really sucks. So if you ever want to build a high frequency trading, a consumer gaming app, it's really not possible on chain because those chains tap at like 100 transactions per second, while Visa is doing like much higher, and like actually Web2 databases are able to process much more. So Facebook looked at this infrastructure stack and they're like, look, we need to build a new VM, a new language to support Facebook on chain. Imagine a stablecoin for Facebook's billions of users where you can send money to your mom in India or your grandma in Bangkok via Facebook itself. So that was the original thesis. SEC obviously was like, nah, you can't do that, and went to 2 programming languages, Apple and Sui. So I was in college, read this article, read about the Aptos story, and started building an Aptos. Me and my co-founder Cooper, who was like 3 years older than me this time, he was like a senior, I was a freshman. We were just like moving super bullish. I was like building decks. He was building like a yield aggregator. Not the best projects, but honestly, like for a college kid, not the worst. And it ultimately dropped out of college. And that was a funny story, which I can get into with telling my parents that. But I was like, I need to go do that. And then post FTX, where it's like, okay, like this move thing's bullish, but we want to bring it to EVM liquidity and Ethereum. Started off in the Avalanche ecosystem, and then found our way to the Ethereum mindshare, and now building the first move layer to Ethereum.
Damn. And so to go back a little bit,
Yep.
you're 14 and
Yep.
you're coding, you're
Yeah.
like working for a company.
Yeah. I was like doing freelance engineering for like analytics companies and whatnot. My dad was a software engineer, so I was always super into like obviously the DC father to DC son pipeline, where it's like they're coding all day and you're like, what is that thing?
Yeah.
And I was just always like, I never got video games as a kid, which honestly is super bullish for me. And then since I didn't have video games on a computer, it was like, okay, what's the next thing? Let me make my own video game. So I started doing that.
Yeah. And then you go high school, you go to college, and you're just doing this engineering work on the side.
Yeah.
And were you playing around with anything in crypto at that point? Were you like,
I didn't have any money. Like I had like a few grand in my bank account maybe. So I didn't have size to put in. I invested in Ethereum here and there. But unfortunately missed the dips. So now I'm like active.
and that was like what, 20?
When I was in college,
Yeah. First year of college.
first year of college was like 3 years ago. I was class of 2025.
Yeah.
So like 3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And you dropped out,
Yeah.
which was an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So you're sitting in college.
Yeah.
You're like learning about kind of Aptos. You're building these apps. What kind of brought you to build on Aptos and build that specific app?
Well, it was like the Facebook thing, right? So I was really interested in Facebook's programming language because I was like, I'm gonna go all in on this because really early on, and no one really was like sure what was going to go on with it, and I was like, if there's anything in crypto to actually make it, and for my parents to ever use or my family to ever use, it's going to be a thing built by Facebook, not by some like random anon dev and like God knows where. So I like. It was an early system. No one was. It was a pretty nascent system, so I thought it could be first to market. So I was like one of the first engineers, just like building DEX contracts. Ultimately, didn't go anywhere. Didn't raise capital. Didn't like really do much. But it was like a good way for like me to feel the move experience. And I think the biggest thing I learned was like I wrote Solidity. I wrote Rust. I was a pretty good developer, and Move was the quickest for me to pick up. Even like sharing with a bunch of my college friends, it was like. For example, I'm not going to get too technical, but to write account checks in Move, it takes like this much code. To do it in like Solana, it's like 2 pages, I would say, and Solidity takes like weeks, which is like a bunch of documentation and code you need to do. So the velocity of production for Move was so quick. It reminded me of like the Zuckerberg experience, right? Like Zuck was able to deploy Facebook, get some original feedback, and go to market really quickly. If you want the same app on chain, the EVM, it's like takes thousands of dollars in auditing fees, months to debug your code, and just maybe you'll get traction, and guess what, you're gonna get hacked. And then you literally exit liquidity. I'm gonna try to say exit liquidity as much as possible, just to chill your bags. But yeah, like I like love the usability. I was like, okay, I'm going all in.
So like, I just want to understand the pipeline a bit, because I know a few people who are just like, TradFi engineers. They're working at like some big tech company. They look at crypto as like kind of a joke, kind of like scams. They're really just working on changing the color of like a Facebook button or something like that. What is the pipeline for a person like that before Move and then after like the introduction of Move to kind of get into developing crypto dApps?
Yeah, so like most like EVM devs will tell you like Solidity is a pain in the ass. It's like really difficult to debug code, and for example, like running account checks, you can spend like hours, weeks, months like debugging code, and there'll always inevitably be a hack. We saw this like Curve and Kyber, like two of the biggest blue chip DeFi protocols, and like they still got hacked. The same attack with the reentry. So I think the biggest thing in Web 2 is different. It's like if you get hacked in Web 2, like you'll lose like a few usernames and like images. Not the end of the not the worst deal. If you get hacked in crypto, you lose millions and millions of dollars, and you lose your entire consumer base overnight. So security is actually very, very important, but the issue is that it's not sexy, right? No one's like posting memes about, oh, I'm gonna secure a blockchain. No one really cares, right? So A, that's a struggle that we're focusing on trying making cool. But B, it's like for a Web2 developer, they don't really get that concept. Like when I'm writing Solidity smart contracts, there's so much that goes into bulletproofing the code, whether it's auditors, whether it's like constantly doing account checks. Honestly, most of them turned off. When I first stumbled across Move, I was like, this is super cool because essentially you have the verification runtime where, let's say, deploy a contract and it has like integer overflow or has some security bug. The Move Prover, which is essentially a tool within the runtime, it can actually block transactions from happening that are fraudulent or like say uncorrect bytecode. We're also working on sequence monitoring. So if there's a transaction that comes in mempool that's really fraudulent, or even from like North Korea, you can actually censor it. So there's this theory coming in, which I'll get into later, probably where censorship is actually good because it allows new developers coming to the ecosystem to have an easier onboarding instead of having to spend like months like figuring out how to debug code.
Yeah. So like a developer who kind of you guys expect will kind of jump past Solidity, and then they, from what I understand, they would have to know something like Rust, basically, and then they build upon their knowledge of Rust using the Move programming language.
Yeah, if you know Rust, it takes you like 3 hours to learn Move probably, or like
really?
a few hours. Yeah, it's not that difficult. It's like Move is to Rust as React is to JavaScript. So Rust is the underlying like language and the kind of like bytecode language. Same with like JavaScript, and then you have frameworks on top of that. So you on Rust, you have like C level, or you have like Anchor, which is for Solana, and then you have the Move framework and then VM. So if you know Rust, you know like Anchor, and you know Move basically.
Okay, and when you're using that language and kind of building a blockchain like Sui or Aptos on top of that, like the initial question is what problems it solves. You mentioned the security like aspect, and kind of have this tagline of, you know, it can't really be hacked, and you know there's kind of safety features already built into the language that kind of are way better than a Solidity. For a non-technical person, that sounds like near impossible. Like living in a world of everything getting hacked and like not clicking on a fucking link ever, and like you know, someone will tweet out like, oh, I have no idea what I did and my like Phantom wallet was just drained. Like a normal person who's not a developer, doesn't understand security, really can't kind of comprehend how a different programming language is going to be like that secure. I think you said like what, like 99.5% of like security risks. Can you kind of explain why that's possible? Kind of like around the how, but like in my mind, the like promise of this is going to be like perfectly secure can't make sense, and it like changes over like a period of time. Is that the case? Or
it's some market is perfectly secure, right? It's like I would say 85-90% more secure than EVM, but it's still 10 to 15%. Like if you write a rug pull contract, like if I'm a developer and you're using, like if I'm a user and I use an app where the developer is like, send all funds to my account, you can't change that. Rug pull is rug pull, right? It's not really focusing on that. It's focusing on the hacks that weren't meant to happen. So like Kyber and Curve. Curve is the blue chip DeFi protocol. Most people in crypto use it. Obviously, they're not trying to rug you. Obviously, it's like meant to be in good intentions. But let's say, for example, the developer on the Curve team pushed a new update and they forgot to write a count check, or they forgot to check for integer overflows. A big example is like a lot of human error, for example. There's only like 256 bits sometimes, and if you write a contract that goes 300, now is an integer overflow there. So what that creates is, if I'm a developer, like I didn't know that I was doing that. It's human error. If I'm a user, I'm using an app like Curve, which in the last 3 months was amazing. The last 6 months, no issues. And all of a sudden today, a random hacker from North Korea just exploited it. So it's less about promising security individuals. You can't do that, and that's a false marketing play. No one will ever be 100% secure, right? Even in Web 2, like if you like every week there's a new like accounts leaks of like all user data. Like Sony recently got hacked, I believe, something like that. So it's never 100% secure. But what we're working to work on is making secure systems more secure, so that more people feel comfortable using it.
Okay, and then the kind of idea of, you know, over, because what the Move language is like how many years old?
I think 3? Like the DM project started, I would say 3-4 years ago.
DM project is the Facebook.
Facebook thing. So the Facebook started initially like four-ish years ago. Aptos launched mainnet post FTX, so a year and a half ago, and Sui launched like a year ago.
Okay, and so like as time goes on, is the language kind of resilient to hacks in like
Yep.
a way that
Yep.
something else is?
Yeah, so like you can customize the rules within the formal verification, right?
And that's like the Yule thing
Yeah.
that you guys are working on.
Yeah, so Yule is like the intermediate bytecode. Not again, don't want to get too technical, but when you deploy a smart contract, whether it's Move, Solidity, whatever, you deploy on the operating system, which in this case is a virtual machine. That virtual machine can take the code, interpret it, and kind of be like, okay, this is my machine level code. So you have the user code, which is essentially the actual script you write, and the operating system, whether it's like in traditional tech, it's like Linux, Mac, etc. They take that code and put it into small bytecode the computer can assess. So you can think of Yule as like the assembly, where it's like the community, the computer itself can understand it.
Okay. And so when you add something like that, like to the
Yep.
Move language,
Yep.
are you kind of you're adding customization basically,
Yep.
right? You're adding like developer customization. Is there
Yep.
like an increase in kind of the risks that happen on like the security side, or
Yeah. So what the Move language does and the Prover does, it looks at the bytecode level and checks for invariance. So in the traditional EVM, let's say there's an attack or some issue with the code, there's no checks within the runtime itself. So like if you deploy a faulty contract, no one's stopping it from going to mainnet, no one's stopping it from being exploited. There's pretty much no protection. On Move, you'll have a runtime prover. So if you deploy a contract that's bad, maybe you're an idiot dev and you forgot, hey, I didn't do a count check, didn't check for variable safety, the prover will flag at runtime because it'll be like, oh, this bytecode is wrong. There's some kind of invariance there. Or, oh, this didn't meet the count checks. I think in traditional tech, you can compare it to like when you're writing software, you write a bunch of test cases, right? It's like, if this test case pass, then execute this. If this test case pass, execute this. The EVM, the virtual machine itself, doesn't have those test cases for code. The Move VM has test cases built into runtime. So if you're a random like 19-year-old dev, you probably don't know how to write these test cases for EVM. You're not a cracked dev. But with Move, those test cases are built into runtime.
okay, so that kind of just basically solves for like the common hacks, automatically.
Yep. So re-entry is the biggest example. Curve, Kyber, every major attack that you read about is re-entry, which means essentially the developer or the hacker can make a smart contract exploit, like say like withdraw multiple times. So you can take like $10 million out from like a 10 USDC contract. That's not possible in Move because essentially they disable it within the runtime.
Okay. And so in the Move world, there's what, like Sui, Aptos, and you guys, basically?
So Aptos was the first project. I would say they are more aligned with the original DM thesis. And then Sui kind of iterated upon it and built their own VM, built a new consensus model. So they're completely different languages essentially. And we're kind of in the middle where we support both styles and they're bringing it to Ethereum.
And what are the differences between the both styles?
Yeah, so I would say like there's like different account models.
Which one do you like better?
I might get in trouble for saying this, but like we're currently neutral. We support both. Like inshallah, go to both. I just think like for us, our VM is Aptos Move because it's easier to pick up from the consensus model. Like the DM virtual machine is easier to pick away from consensus and kind of customize it. The Sui Move VM is more directly correlated to Sui blockchain and Sui consensus. So it's like very difficult to take the Sui Move VM and put it on a different blockchain because a lot of the bytecode reels directly to the consensus. So for our use cases, we prefer the Aptos Move VM. We prefer like the Move Prover. So the Aptos Move VM is, I would say, more secure because it has a prover built into the VM. I think Sui is more focused on speed and competing with Solana on that side. So I just think it's different use cases for both.
Yeah, and so I'm usually wrong about this. If I've made this reference like a million times. Yep. I completely missed the Solana trade. I was hating on Solana, the SVM. I kind of didn't really believe in the idea of like scalability, monolithic blockchain, everything like that, and I've eaten shit for it. So I'm usually hesitant on like how these newer ecosystems are going to grab liquidity and grab developers, because I think most of the time, like someone like me, someone like Ali, we're moving chains. We're moving two different chains for like a specific app, a specific experience, whether it's like Solana meme coins or something like MarginFi, or just it's really centered around the dApps. When it comes to kind of how you guys understand what you're bringing with Move. So it's security and then scalability and what's the third? Like
Speed. Like, I mean, parallelization is like the big hot narrative, right? Like high throughput.
Yeah, but like the what is it? The blockchain trilemma. What are the three things? Security, scalability.
That's
a decentralization,
decentralization, liquidity, something like that.
Something like that. Like, so you have speed, right?
Yeah.
Solana was supposed to be the solution for speed.
Yeah.
Like, but now Sui, Aptos, and you guys are saying that you're the solution for speed. What's the difference maker there?
I think it's like a lot of this is exposed recently. Like Solana is having issues right now with transaction validity and all. But I think they're working to fix it. I'm actually bullish that they're having issues because people are actually using the chain. A lot of people are giving Solana slack, and I'm like, dude, no other, like, there's been like 3 chains tested properly.
Yeah.
Which is why Solana is going down, because they actually have users. So first of all, hats off Solana. I think they're gonna crush it and like kind of fix what they're doing. I think the Move ecosystem, like especially Sui here, is focused on consensus upgrades. So even during times of like high network usage, they're able to manage load balancing properly. But I think like speed is honestly non-trivial. Like I think my general thesis is that people are over-indexing on speed. As someone building a parallelized VM, is that in today's market, like Solana is doing a 2K TPS, 3K TPS, and like that's generally user demand. People are marketing like, oh, we're doing 50K TPS, 60K TPS. No one really cares. We don't have use cases yet to warrant that. So I think what the Move ecosystem uniquely brings is the security aspect. So yes, you have parallelization. Yes, you have speed. You have block STM, which is like the main Aptos consensus mechanism, and then Monad's doing essentially a different version of that on EVM. But the combination is just user experience. If I'm a 14-year-old girl or a 70-year-old woman, how do I use this app without knowing I'm using crypto? It comes down to 2 things. User like speed. So obviously having transactions quickly, not waiting 3 business days and putting $1,000 in gas fees. Sui is like essentially Sui and Aptos are both working on consensus upgrades. So handling the issues that Solana is facing. And then B, it's on security. So if I'm deploying 1,000 ETH or like $1,000 even, not getting hacked is a pretty good sign for retail investors.
Yeah. And you talked a little bit about the parallelization.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a very big promise that a lot of teams are trying to live up to. I remember when kind of people were trying to say that Solana would have some levels of parallelization. The idea that, I feel like everyone makes a comparison of, one person that is kind of spamming like an NFT mint will be able to kind of use the chain the same way that someone is, using DeFi. Like they won't really cross paths. They won't really cause any congestion. That'll live on. I remember people making that claim for Solana in some ways. And now like the chain is fucked. Beyond the claim, I think Sui and Aptos and like Move in general make this claim as well. For the uneducated, how does the parallelization kind of work in movement? And how will it, well, other than trusting it, like how can we be sure that it's actually going to like work? And then when like 1,000 people come on, we're not just gonna be like fucking sitting there unable to mint or some shit.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting is that we don't actually do much work in parallelization. Like we're fortunate to inherit the Move VM from Aptos. For context, Aptos actually pioneered, or Aptos Labs, the DM program actually pioneered parallelization back in the day. So Block STM is like the fundamental consensus engine for VMs that enables transaction pipelining. So multiple third pipelining and having high throughput on execution. That was pioneered by the DM program, which then Aptos took with Black STM because it's the same team. So from the VM point of view, we're not changing much from We're actually just using the Aptos VM and DM VM. So all the parallelization work has come from the DM program. So it isn't a trust me, bro. It's trust Facebook, bro.
And that's live right now on Aptos?
Yeah, you can use Aptos today. Monad is actually, the Monad's parallelization is actually not a fork, but an inspiration from Block STM, and they actually cite this DM BFT from the DM days as well. So like we're not actually doing it. We're actually more focused on the security aspect because the DM Block STM is actually perfect. Like it's good to go. You don't need to do much work there.
So in your eyes, basically, Move is just perfect. And
it's not perfect. Nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
I think there's always the first thing, the major issue is like developer adoption. I would say like from a good market point of view, Move has struggled because it launched post FTX. It also wasn't done in like a Web3 native way. It was done in like obviously Aptos and Sweden are like Silicon Valley and like Web2 kind of companies, and there wasn't like the degen like I want to ape meme coins culture. So that's something we're working on.
And so I think I covered everything in like the movement, or I mean in the move kind of ecosystem. New programming language, more secure, faster, scalable. Decentralization is pretty much a meme now. But can you explain kind of the decentralization levels between Sui, Aptos, some of the move ecosystem stuff, and how you guys are thinking about it?
Yeah, I think like Sui and Aptos aren't really focused on decentralization. Like it's like the hardware requirements, it's like pretty high. You have to like pay $10 million US to run an Aptos node or something.
Jesus.
So it's like a few $1 million to run it. I don't know the current price, but it's also hardware requirements are pretty high. So I don't think they're very focused on decentralization. Again, it's a meme. Does anyone actually care about it? Not really. Like you can run like 10 nodes on like Phantom or something, and it's like not that big of a deal. But I think what we're focused on is the sequence level. So most layer 2s today like have a centralized sequencer. If you look at inscriptions, most of these sequencers went down past 100 TPS. So basically what centralized sequencer is, it's one node that runs it for the whole layer 2, which is why Arbitrum based these big layer 2s are printing money off sequencer fees. But it's just all going back to foundation. So one thing that we actually announced yesterday as well is that we have a fully live decentralized sequencer, which means
that's the M1, right?
That's M1.
Okay.
So you have like 100 nodes that all take turns in sequencing layer 2. So what that means is if I'm a node runner, I can stake the native token, move, to participate in sequencing and actually get the sequencing fees in return. So instead of all the sequencing fees going to the foundation and pocketing it, we're actually giving it back to stakeholders. So it's a fully decentralized network. And it also helps with composability between rollups. So if you have a shared sequencer that powers the main layer 2 movement, as well as other layer 2s, we have some pretty exciting partnerships we're announcing. They actually have composability. You don't really need a third-party bridge. You can actually, since you have the same node, kind of sequencing both and multiple layer 2s, you can do atomic transactions between different layer 2s. So coming down to decentralization, we believe sequencers should be in the hands of the community. There should be token economic models built in. So pretty much every layer 2 token like is a meme coin right now. It's all governance tokens, which God knows what that means. We actually have value accrual to our token because validators have to stake the token, and that actually creates buyer pressure because validators need to buy the token to run the node, and then once they get emissions as well as rewards from the other transaction fees, they can use those fees to run more and more nodes. So it's actually value accrual back instead of just meme coins. But I love meme coins.
Yeah. You mentioned the M1, and I want to get into kind of like all the aspects of what you guys are building, but I missed a question that like I myself am personally interested in. Back to kind of your start, and you said your co-founder was like a few years older than you. Like, what went into your mind where you're kind of like building this project, and then you meet this guy, and you're like, okay, let's build Movement Labs. Like, what is that like for like the freshman in whatever college that kind of is thinking about doing something similar?
I think it was like looking back, probably another like an idiot decision. We were just like really excited about Move, and we actually got like into like a pretty good hands of like mentorship and support. Like we reached back in like November 2022. There was only 3 systems where you could do a Rust-based VM. It was Avalanche, Cosmos, and Polkadot. Cosmos at the time didn't really have it still doesn't really have a centralized force behind it. So like as much as we loved Tendermint and had a background in Cosmos, it didn't make sense to bootstrap a completely new layer 1 from a team that doesn't have resources. Like Polkadot is Polkadot, won't comment there. So left us to Avalanche, and we actually got great support from the Avalanche ecosystem. They really opened us up with open hearts, like shout out Luigi. But they really mentored us. They're like, these 2 idiot kids don't know what they're doing, but let's help them. So like weekly calls, kind of giving us advice here and there. So with that kind of support, I think we had a client where like Avalanche came to us and like, we want you to like build Move stuff for us. And then B, I was like hating college. Like I was in college learning Java, like intro to programming while I was like building DeFi apps. And it was like, what am I doing? It's wasting my time. So ultimately me and Cooper were like, let's just go all in on this. This is like post FTX. Like this is when everyone was exiting and everyone was super down bad. And we doubled down and we're like, you know what? This is when we strike. So for 2 idiot kids, it kind of worked out for us.
And so you guys have a conversation. You're like, we're gonna make our own L2 using Move. That's the initial convo.
Post FTX, we're like, okay, we love
just in like the school cafeteria. Like
I was in the basement. So Branscombe Quad is like like a World War II like dormitory that like the Vanderbilt University had, and I was like in the basement where there's mold everywhere, and we would work out of the basement. And it was kind of like, look, I kind of miss those days because it was like you're eating ramen, you're literally eating ramen, you have like $30 in your bank account, you don't know what the hell you're doing, you're getting 1,000 notes from every investor. So like we were just like, look, like we believe in Move, but we believe like we can do it better, unironically, because we were Web3 native. We kind of knew what community building it needed, and honestly, like, Aptos and Sweet, they'll agree this to themselves, don't do the best job of community building. So one thing that we knew we could do is like be Web3 native, be in the Discords, be a little degen, and it brings this novel technology to the EVM folks. So we started in November, took a lot of shit and ate a lot of shit, and now we're here.
Yeah, you guys had an interesting ride. Like we've been following movement for a while now, and yeah, you guys definitely went through a lot of shit. Like being in different places and a lot of people talking shit. But you guys came out you guys came out looking really good. I think like I'm always hesitant on these newer ecosystems and how they're kind of going to bring liquidity. But I really like what you mentioned on like the community building. Like it's clear like that's what kind of makes or breaks these ecosystems. Like me personally, I haven't heard of a single dApp on Aptos. I've touched Wii like a few times. Like I have no reason to kind of jump over there. Like there's people that were kind of airdrop farming, or there's people that are kind of just looking for the next shitcoin on a new chain. But beyond that, like it's really hard to find those use cases. So yeah, I think that's like really key that you guys recognize that like missing piece in the Move ecosystem in general.
I mean, use case is community, right? Like you look at Mana, like their cutting edge isn't like the technology. Technology is great, community is a genius, but like it's about like the memes, it's about like the culture of the community. Bear like I don't even know if they have a chain, but like they have the best community, right?
Yeah.
So like learning from like those folks, it's like clear that in today's infrastructure stack, it's really important to bootstrap community and then worry about a long horizon. I think what the movie system messed up with is they focus on Amazon and Google Cloud before the Anon DEX, which you just can't do in Web3.
So let's break down like the infrastructure. You mentioned right now you guys are really looking to be the Move kind of L2 on Ethereum. You kind of explained the reasoning behind that. Can you explain a little bit on how that infrastructure works, the benefits of it?
Yeah. So we know what Move is. We got to the point where it's like fastest and most secure VM in the market. But what lacked in the past was liquidity, access to liquidity, being within the broader Ethereum ecosystem. So our general thesis was, okay, Move is great, but how do we kind of like not hide it, but make it such a feature, not like the thesis? So the general thesis is a parallelized next-gen layer 2. So Eclipse is doing for Solana VM. You have Fruit Groups doing this for parallelized EVM. Bringing the Move VM in through layer 2. So you have Ethereum for settlement, the Move VM for execution. It's actually fully EVM compatible as well. We have an EVM interpreter. So it accepts Solidity code as well as Move code, both on the execution layer, which we can probably get into. We have Ethereum for settlement. We have our own shared sequencer, which is M1, that takes turns in quorum for sequencing layer 2. And then we use Celestia for alternative DA because current mainnet Ethereum DA is pretty expensive.
Yeah. And so the vision is that this M1 sequencer is going to kind of sequence everything for all of the M2s.
We call it M2 originally, but we're just gonna call it movement just because it was a little confusing. Yeah. So movement is the main layer to like optimism. You have M1, which is a shared sequencer. Think of a super chain, and then you have other rollups launching with a stack, like Base, Zora. So you just kind of put comparison to that.
Yeah, and you guys said you guys have some partnerships coming in the pipeline for some of these newer chains.
Yeah, we announced Gaiman, which is at 30 billion market cap, 3 billion FU right now. They're like a essentially gaming chain. We have Henry, which is like a social consumer. So think of like Honey, but on chain. And we have some AI Deepin, some of the biggest projects in the space, announcing in a few weeks.
Awesome. And then kind of how does that relationship begin for these newer chains, and what's kind of the work that they have to do to kind of, and the experience they kind of get partnering with you guys? Yeah,
so like I think there's a bunch of rule of frameworks. You have like LP Stack, Arbitrum Orbit, Polygon CDK, and all of those folks are saying we'll provide you with the framework, but use the EVM. So we took a step back and we're like, we don't want to compete at the role of framework. Like those guys are good at their job. LP Stack is base. We're not going to compete there. We're actually just going to focus on execution layer. So you can use whatever role framework, use whatever DA layer. We're the only group focused on changing the execution layer. So if you want a fast VM on the Polygon CDK, on Avail or Celestia or EigenDA, you can just use our VM and then connect a shared sequencer and then opt into the Move stack. So how that looks is we're actually partnering with a few RASes, and similar to how you have like role framework, DA, you'll now have an option for execution layer. So instead of just the EVM copy paste chain, you can use a Move VM or the Move EVM that we have, where you can have EVM compatibility, but also you have a parallelized VM at your will, ready to use whenever. So having that one-click deployment for any chain is what we're working on. But for the close partners, we're kind of incubating and working with them on the tech stack as we push towards testnet.
And so you mentioned the kind of issue with attracting liquidity.
Yep.
There's like the community aspect that brings that solution, but there's also kind of the dApps. Would you call them dApps?
Yep.
Or like their own chains?
Yep.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, so like the main liquidity is like the main BD focus for the DeFi team is focusing on bringing liquidity to the main chain. So because we live in Ethereum, it helps in a lot of ways where you can directly bridge ETH over. So if you're like a liquid fund or a family office, if you wanted to get in the Move exposure in the past, you had to buy APT or SWI, which is a volatile asset. A lot of these funds don't have risk appetite for it, so deploying liquidity was kind of difficult. Now with us, they can natively deploy ETH and bridge it directly because it's layer 2. You live on Ethereum for security and settlement, so it's a lot better investment and risk appetite for the folks. And then generally the BD effort, it's like if you're going to family offices and liquid funds, they have a lot of ETH. In the past, they were more hesitant to deploy on chain because of smart contract risk. Obviously, there's like poor insurance models. So we're working on is actually like creating this flywheel where because smart contract security is so good on movement, we can actually offer insurance premiums that are much better. Lower insurance premiums that can then incentivize capital. So we actually have like over 80 million ETH committed to deploy and bridge directly day zero. Most of these from family offices, liquid funds that in the past were scared of EVM or unsure, and now we're able to provide them accurate risk premiums. We're working with a few groups of insurance providers day zero. So imagine a world where you can deploy ETH, bridge it directly from Ethereum mainnet, don't have to buy a new asset or anything. You can get fully on-chain insurance because the risk premiums are pretty low. And now you can deploy capital, have insurance to back it, and actually feel safe that you're not going to get wrecked and become exit liquidity.
So you basically get like a brand new environment, a safer environment for everything you do on ETH through movement.
Yep.
Okay,
and you don't have to pay high gas fees. Like we have a parallelized VM, so like if you use Base, sometimes it's still like crazy. Arbitrum goes crazy, and gas fees. Ethereum, we don't talk about that. We have a parallelized runtime, so cents the gas fees are like 3 to 5 cents. So you won't notice you're using layer 2.
Yeah, and you mentioned the kind of community aspect.
Yeah.
How would you describe like the current community?
Yeah.
What are you guys up to?
Yeah, so like our kind of branding is more focused on like Greek. Like our testnet is like Parthenon. I'm a big like Greek and Roman mythology guy, so I love like our mascots like Movius or like our animals like gorilla. So like the community's been going crazy. Honestly, just like Cooper and the team have been really focused on that. I'm pretty sure Cooper's full-time job is like community and Discord and stuff, which is kind of cool. But like yeah, it's like we've seen like immense community recently, and this is with like 3.4 mil publicly announced. They're not even ready for like the big raise announcement. But yeah, we've seen a lot of people like making content, like building their own apps. The Discord's going crazy. And there's like NFT collections dropping right now, which is like a gorilla NFT collection. I think it's like we take that time. Like I'm in Discord like saying Gmove every day, and then like my co-founders like actually like putting stuff in there. And that's our main focus, honestly. Like the tech will come. Like we're pretty confident that like it doesn't matter if you have tech and no community, because then it's just like a vaporware, right? We're focused on community first. Getting these projects funded, so a lot of ecosystem projects are closing rounds right now, as well as like helping them kind of navigate through the Discords and figure out what to do.
Yeah, and yeah, the community aspect in crypto is probably like my favorite part. Like I met a few people from Off-Chain Labs today, like never seen them in my life, don't know their first name. Their PFP is like some anime chick or something like that. And they're amazing people to meet with, and so that's one of my favorite parts of this. You have like bear chain in the Discord. You don't even know if it's a fucking chain. You have like some random bong bear like NFT, like just crazy shit. The dude's walking around like Smokey, walking around with like a bear hat on all the time. And then there's also like the financial side. Like the certain Monad Discord roles got like 20,000 in a wormhole airdrop. Like you can like just live off this, like you can live in the community. Like that's what I think crypto is unique, because like
I think a lot of chains of approaches like we're focused on Amazon, Google Cloud, and like BlackRock first. I'm like, that's gonna take time. Like that's gonna take a decade. How are you gonna be relevant for the next 6 to 12 months? And it's not gonna be like a suit and tie in Dallas or like New York. It's going to be the Anon dev in like Shanghai. It's like memeing and like trying to get Discord because ultimately crypto, like the PMF isn't really in the States. I think that's what we kind of make a mistake. And it's like we have Venmo. Venmo is great. Like I can send money to you in the States. Inshallah, it goes through. It's fine. Banking is fine, not too bad. The real PMF is like Southeast Asia, Latin America, like mainland China, where capital markets aren't that good. Banking is really difficult. We're trying to bank unbank. That's why we're all here, right? So when you take a look at that, like, although you'll argue like airdrop farming sucks and like that's like making it like that looks predatory, but like for these people, like they need to eat. Like their genuine career is to live in Discord, to be part of the community, and feel welcomed. So if you can take a look at that lens and like understand, like, look, the 20K airdrop that they got, for us, it's like, okay, fine, it's like another paycheck probably. For them, it's like they just fed their family and village.
Yeah, yeah, that's fucking crazy. Like, and then you also see like with the Mad Lads and Wormhole specifically, like people missed out on like a whole different valuation for that NFT and like a whole different airdrop category based on like a Discord role.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that going on in kind of your guys' community?
Yep.
What should people be like hunting for? Should there be like artists? Should there be kind of memers? What are you guys interested in?
Yeah, I mean, Keanu's a close friend and he's an investor as well. So we're learning a lot from Monad and we're doing something similar. Like people got the Omni airdrop recently for certain roles, the most active people who made memes for Omni and with the Omni movement, they just got rewarded. So we'll be like, if you're looking to get movement, like you can check out the Discord and see like people made a lot of money off the airdrops recently. So we're doing a very similar approach. I think we're more focused on like obviously culture, like memes, community, but like deploying smart contracts. So within the Parthenon testnet, we have a building the Parthenon like in DevNet. And participate, there'll be multiple different guilds. So you have a guild focused on, let's say, for example, meme making. You have a guild focused on song making. You have a guild focused on smart contract development. You have an auditing guild. So if you're an auditor and you want to like just contribute to the ecosystem, you can earn points, arguably a lot more points, just by auditing people's codes. So we've been seeing a lot of that, like pro bono auditing within the community.
Yeah. Have you ever hit on recent airdrops?
No, I don't farm airdrops.
No airdrop farming?
I just missed everything.
Yeah. For what do you do on chain? Like, what was the most recent thing?
I'm big ETH buy sell ETH. So like when the market's really bullish, I sell. When the market's bearish, I buy. So I'm buying a lot right now. I don't really get into volatile assets because it's like it's becomes too much distraction. So like BTC, ETH, Sol. And most a lot of different do is like to move tickers. But I'm not a big trader. I think it's like understanding the markets. I do a lot of angel investing these days. So most of my kind of investments in private markets because I bring generally a lot of value in terms of helping founders like distribute and kind of understand the situation. So most of my investments are private market deals.
And the comparison I've used that kind of allowed me to mid-curve the Solana trade was the idea of where your assets are, where your net worth is. Where is like 90% of your net worth that's on chain?
I think it's Ethereum right now.
All Ethereum?
It's all Ethereum. Do I like the gas fees? No, but I just think like as someone who doesn't want to get involved in the trading aspect much, Ethereum, stable value money, I think it's always going to be there. It is relatively more risk on, so compared to like something like T-bills and whatnot. So you still get the market's effect, but I think like most of my net worth is in Ethereum. Yeah.
And for like specific dApps you use, like has it been more DeFi centric? Yep. Have you used like the SocialFi, Friendtech, game
It's
stuff?
actually this really cool app. It's Exaki's app. It's Sommelier. It's essentially like a risk adjusted vaults, and they use like 7 Cs. But it's actually a Cosmos layer 1 that like does a lot of like yield management. So I just like put my ETH there. And so the APY is pretty good. Does like essentially gets real yield from like Aave and other lending protocols as built-in strategies. So instead of me like aping into Aave and aping out of it and figuring out the stuff, it does it for me. So I'd highly recommend Sommelier.
Yeah. And for the movement ecosystem, you mentioned some of the partners you have. What do you imagine is going to be the thing that gets, maybe me or Ali to bridge over?
I think like eventually it's like you'll see like the hacks are big thing, right? So if you use Curve, a lot of people don't feel safe going back to Curve. So I think the first PMF is from people who like got hacked and then realizing like, okay, I can still get Ethereum and use a move based vault. So Tal is like one of the biggest move protocols, if not the biggest. And they're deploying a bunch of lending markets, DEXs, doing a bunch of restaking APS stuff right now. So for the people who got wrecked and were Exit Liquidity, you can now feel safe on movement. As for community vibes, but also security vibes, you have better UX. So like if you're on Ethereum using like Curve, Avi, whatnot, the gas fees are pretty high. Which if you have 3K in size, 4K in size, you're paying $200 in gas fees. Not the best. So because we're paralyzed, have good UX, those fees are like negligible. I think the last thing is like, so short-term DeFi security is the playbook. Solving the 4.5 billion, being the best way to deploy ETH and get yield, and not worry about your access getting hacked. And have the same experience like Solana, so I think Solana and Ethereum. Long term, it is a place for consumer gaming. Like Facebook built this programming language, right? So if there ever was a language and framework to really get the adoption from a Facebook or even like institutional players that want to get into crypto, it's going to be Move. From intuitiveness, from a gaming point of view, dynamic NFTs and like asset minting is much more streamlined. But just the vibes are like, Facebook built this language, not like some random dev. So if you were to build a consumer app, and a lot of our focus long term is consumer, it's going to be a movement.
Yeah, and for reference, like most of the people I know who, like I came up through DeFi. Yeah. Ali, I know he came up through DeFi. A lot of people in our circle really came up through like random DeFi projects. DeFi yield farming, all that kind of stuff, and honestly, like majority of us stopped. Like I haven't had my like a large amount of my funds on chain in like a DeFi protocol in a long time, like you said, because of that security aspect. So I do think that is like something that I'm excited to see. But on like a DApp level and kind of how you guys imagine the DApps that are going to come on to movement, I know like Bear Chain has this idea where there's going to be apps that are basically like core to the chain and are initially going to be there. And what I really liked about that aspect was there's no just like 100 forks of a DeFi protocol. How are you guys kind of conceptualizing on what day one looks like versus like day 100, day 300 of the app landscape?
Yeah, so I think starting off, like we have a close group of builders. We're not doing spray and pray and be like 100 apps. We want 100 apps. We'd rather have 5-6 good apps, because ultimately if you look at any layer 2, like Arbitrum had GMX, Optimism had like Synthetics. Like every layer 2 can have this one flagship app. So ultimately it becomes an app chain eventually. So we're focused on like 3-4 good builders that, for example, like Adam Tala, like I think he's going to kill it in terms of the products he's bringing to market, and he's working on some ABS stuff as well. So focus on those builders and empowering them. Glenn is another builder from Echelon. So like having those core builders, building community around them, helping them close rounds, that's the main focus. And then I think a different angle that we're really focused on is consumer and gaming. So we have a consumer chain launching called Henry. They're like instant buybacks, and they do a lot of like shopping stuff for commerce. So our ecosystem is also focused on app chains within the ecosystem, because a lot of these chains now, like if you have an app, the premium for being an app is like 100 mil, 200 mil FTV. But if you can say your app chain, now you can go to market much bigger. Yeah. So as much as like you can argue, hey, that's not the best thing for the industry, but like that's today's market. Like it's more profitable to be a chain infrastructure play than app. So instead of fighting that and be like, oh, why don't you guys fund apps? Take a step back and realize, okay, app chains are hella bullish, because you can have like a DYDX feel, have your own a use case, and have people build on top of it. So addressing that market, I think a lot of our BD going forward is focused on how do we build an ecosystem of app chains. We have a big AI partnership we're announcing pretty soon. That's one of the biggest AI projects in space and deep in projects in space. And for them, they need their own block space. They don't want to be like underneath another chain. They want to build their own brand identity, but also they need their own block space. They're congesting the network. So they're actually using our stack and launching their own custom app chain. And I think going forward, like, yes, you'll have DeFi, yes, you have security on the main chain, but the value play is going to be from all these different roll-ups that all want to have high throughput and combine towards the movement network for one goal.
Yeah, I like that. And you guys are very close with the Monad team, the Bear Chain team, but you guys are fighting for these dApps, for this liquidity. How do you feel like you guys can differentiate and really attract those guys?
Yeah, I think fighting is like interesting word. Like ultimately, we're not in this industry for like this fighting for the same 100 devs for the same $10 liquidity. We're trying to bring new use cases and people in. Obviously, that's better, easier said than done. And ultimately, it does come down to, okay, you are ultimately in a finite resource market. You're competing with other players. I think we approach it like vibes, like just be a nice guy, like do what you're like building, do your best, and if your tech and community can improve, you'll win, you'll attract liquidity. I think like we're in good hands and good circles where like Mon and Barachain have like the best community, and they're going to attract a lot of volume like organically, and I think being associated and like working with the communities and within the communities, we'll be able to track some of that as well, and as well bring in liquidity from folks that felt burnt in our systems or not felt attended to. But also, like, I think we're also focused on, like, okay, Move is built by Facebook. It is a Silicon Valley. Like, I'm going to keep saying Facebook. I'm shilling that thing because it is the way to convince Sally from Ohio to deploy funds, right?
Yeah.
Because it isn't an EVM built by some random Adon dev. Facebook built this thing. Like, our announcement is going to be like Facebook on Ethereum. Although it's not entirely true, and as a DM is like now spun off, that is the way that we're going to focus on onboarding, right? When we can go to new clients and be like, look, if they ask like why Move, it's like Facebook built this thing, we're now bringing it to Ethereum. This is the only spot in crypto where you're combining like the technology learnings from the biggest consumer app while Web3 nativeness in a one-stop shop.
Yeah. And when you say Facebook built it, did they like finish it?
So I think DM was ready for production, but SEC struck it down.
Yeah.
So SEC was like, you cannot deploy this.
Okay.
So America, like literally for regulation, they shut down.
Yeah.
That's what Aptos and Sui spun out.
And like what are like the, I mean, TPS is like kind of a meme these days, but I find it funny that like Monad was able to meme like 10,000 TPS into existence. Yeah. What are like the Move kind of numbers?
I think Movium said 30K. I think that's what Aptos can do. But like, there's a lot of different ways to measure TPS, so God knows what that means. But I think 30K is a number that is advertised.
Yeah.
Originally started off as 120K, and then they're like that got shrunk down, I think. Because there's like different ways you can. Because the difference of like MoveVM versus the SVM is optimistic parallelization. For those that aren't familiar with Solana VM, it's like developers actually have to manually kind of figure out the characteristics for doing transactions. So like managing the threads. So it's much more hands-on, a little bit more difficult. With BlockSTM and Aptos Move or Move in general, you have optimistic parallelization. So the transactions are queued automatically in concurrency. So developers don't need to worry about how the processing of transactions is done manually or automatically.
Yeah, and then being that you guys are like an L2 on Ethereum, what kind of like security guarantees do you guys inherit?
I mean, you get Ethereum security guarantees, right? You have trust minimized bridge from Ethereum. So if I have a lot of ETH on main Ethereum, I can bridge it directly like any other layer 2. I don't need to use like wormhole layer 0s, third-party players. I have like a verified contract and bridge contract directly. So if for a lot of these funds that don't want to risk funds in like wormhole layer 0, they want to bridge ETH directly and native ETH. As well as like if you're a DeFi protocol, like I built a DEX in Aptos. Going back to use case, I built a DEX in Aptos. Back then it was APT and like test Natala, which makes the DEX rather useless. That same DEX can deploy on top of us. You have native ETH, you have all Move assets, you have EVM assets from a compiler. You have actually we're IBC compatible with Union, so like Noble USDC. So we should have native USDC before the Move chains themselves. As well as like Atom Tia. So this DEX that I built in the past could now have Cosmos, EVM, native ETH, Move, all in one-stop shop. Day 0.
When is day 0?
August, September.
August, September?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, hopefully the devs can ship. Inshallah, the devs ship.
Okay, so August, September, like it all becomes a reality. Is there anything in your guys' pipeline or kind of things that keep you up at night for shipping to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're super excited. Hopefully around the time this goes live, announcing Series A, a 38 million Series A led by Polychain Capital. Have some great backers that we're excited to announce and brings total funding to around 42 mil. And I think it's me and Cooper had like a lot of difficulty starting off, like trying to figure out like who, like we were two idiot kids.
Name drop everyone who said no to you.
I will simply go back to like, you will pay higher. But I think it's like, I mean, to be fair, like I didn't blame them. Like, if I'm like a fund like post FTX and like I'm struggling to raise LP capital, I have to go to my LPs and be like, look, there's just two kids. They have no brand name. They have basically no Twitter game. They have like zero, like, I mean, they have limited knowledge because they're college kids, but we're going to go back them. For those that backed us early on, they're pretty happy with themselves now. But like, it made a lot of sense. I don't know if I would back myself if I was back then, but I think it was like difficult for us to kind of build the brand name identity, especially depths of the bear market when everyone's fleeing crypto. And now we kind of got some traction, have some early believers. And now we're off the races.
You'd say your pitch got like a little bit better since then?
Yeah, I back in the days I used to have like this like note tab on the screen. I used to read up the screen, like read my script off, read what I was saying off the script, because I didn't like I was just like didn't know how to pitch. I didn't know how to compose myself, and then got to like I think when you start off you don't have a name. You're pitching yourself because no one knows what you are. And nowadays like
Did you come up with a name?
Movement. Oh, that's actually a good question. I think I don't. It's not a me or Cooper. One of us came up with it. We were just like in the basement. We're like, okay, so this move thing. Like, how do we call? What do we call it? And it was like movement because it's a movement. And it was really corny at first because we're like, this is corny. But then it stuck on, and then people were just like, oh, it's a movement. It's a movement. Oh yeah, it worked out.
Yeah. Do you have any like funny stories of on those initial pitches or kind of?
Yeah, there's like. We got roasted. Like usually it was like me kind of talking, and me and Cooper were both on the pitches at these times. And Cooper was more introverted, so like we like didn't know like the cadence of like, okay, you say this, I say this. So we text each other like, okay, you say this, and then eventually like I'm like, Cooper, I got the pitch. So like, I handle all pitches now and like kind of investor relations. But back then, like we didn't know how to pitch properly, so it was like, okay, what are you gonna say? What are you gonna say? And I had a note tab like explain what I need to say, and then like. I think like I didn't understand the concept of like how do you create hype for yourself. So I was like just didn't know the market, didn't know the game, and then I think when we first starting off, there's like one investor who passed, and he was just like these these kids have no technical knowledge. They're not crypto native. They don't know what they're doing. They will never make it. Jeez. And I actually screenshotted that, and it's my screensaver.
Jeez.
And then I'm not gonna name drop names, but I'm gonna like yeah. I think there's gonna be one of these days where I'm just gonna add them and be like, okay, this you.
Oh my god, dude, that's crazy. That should be the picture for the raise announcement.
Yeah, that should be no. That's kind of, we still have a lot left to prove. I think it'll be like maybe we can meme coin with it.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. Yeah, that's a great fucking meme coin to launch. So you're pitching to like probably some of the biggest investors out there. How did you initially pitch this to your parents?
Yeah, I think my mom still thinks I work for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I think it was like, yeah, I was like, I told him to take a leave of absence first. So I was like, I'll be back in 6 months. Like, don't worry about it. I think he's still taking a leave of absence, so I'm sorry about that. But anyways, it was just like I just really believed in myself, and I think they like at first they were like shocked. They were like, "What is this?" But ultimately, it's like Rushi's smart. He knows what he's doing. Let him be. At this point, we were a little capital raise, so I was not gonna be homeless. But I think it was like I didn't enjoy life in school. I was like talking to them like, look, I was going through a dark time as well because I was kind of managing this company thing and like kind of managing school, and it was like honestly a lot of work. Didn't have friends, didn't talk to women, didn't have any friends, didn't sleep properly, didn't eat. So I was like, look, I really want to go all in this. My mental health is struggling. Why would I like do both and suck at both? Why not just go all in on one? So I think like to my advice to any young founders watching this, like don't do both. If you have conviction and you're like, you can always take a gap semester and like come back and like you'll graduate on time. It's definitely worth it to like not sacrifice mental health, believe in yourself, take some time off, and just go pursue something because you can always go back to college. You can always get the degree. That degree will wait for you until like 30, 40. You don't get this precious time. We are in this early stage industry, which is why we're all here and why you're watching this. We are in like the early stages of the internet where if you're here, you're about to like make it. Like if you went through the FTX and bear market, you're just getting started, and retail is still coming. Like we're still so early, and to be part of this like young growing industry, like if you're not in crypto, you're sidelined.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think like a lot of people kind of go through similar things and hear that, hear like one story and hear like get inspiration from somebody and make that change. So hopefully a few people listen to that.
Yeah, I'm happy to be support. My Twitter's Rushi Just reach out.
This guy's fucking 21. Like that's crazy. Being like a founder of like a whole ecosystem at 21 is like fucking nuts. So hats off to you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything I missed? Anything you guys?
Launching testnet in a month. So Parthenon is like our like go-to-market strategy where we're inviting developers and meme makers and culture creators to kind of participate in different guilds, which I touched on. So if you're like memes, if you're making songs, if you like just want to be with the community, like we invite you. There's some good incentives. People have made a lot of money so far with airdrops and whatnot. But it's less about that. I think it's like again, me and Cooper are two idiot kids and still will ever be two idiot kids. We're pretty like still modest in that. So I want to be a resource to people. Like if you have a pitch deck or if you have something to help on, like happy to give comments and feedback. And then B, just like the community, the place to be. There's a lot of exciting news coming in the next 10 to 15 days. So don't fade.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, congrats on the round. That's episode. We'll call it 69. It was a good episode.
Thanks,
I
man.
think it gets to 69. That's episode 69.
Cool.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
Ooh. Yeah.